Welcome back to the channel. I'm Etienne. Over the last 3 episodes, we've explored some of the biggest mysteries that fascinated me during my years in Japan.
In our first episode, we talked about why Japanese people tend to live longer than almost anyone else in the world.
Then we explored why Japanese streets remain remarkably clean, even though public trash cans are surprisingly difficult to find.
And in our last episode, we looked at 7 Japanese cleaning habits that save hours every week.
Today, I'd like to talk about something that confused me almost immediately after I arrived in Japan. And honestly, it's something that still surprises many visitors today. Why are Japanese people so rarely obese? As a German, this made absolutely no sense to me when I first moved to Tokyo, because before arriving in Japan, I had a very specific image in my head.
I imagine Japanese people eating fish, vegetables, rice, and little else.
Maybe they simply avoided unhealthy food. Maybe they spent hours exercising. Maybe they followed strict diets. Then I actually arrived in Japan. And within a few weeks, every one of those assumptions collapsed.
Because the first Japanese coworker I became friends with was a man named Sato. And Sato seemed determined to destroy every theory I had.
Every weekday, we ate lunch together. Some days he ordered ramen, other days curry rice, sometimes fried pork cutlets, occasionally a large bowl of noodles. On Fridays, he joined us after work for drinks, beer, snacks, more food, more beer. As the months passed, I became increasingly confused. Because Sato never seemed to gain weight. Not after 6 months.
Not after a year. Not after several years. Meanwhile, I felt like I was gaining weight just by looking at the menu. One evening after work, I finally asked him, "Sato, what's your secret?"
He laughed. Then he pointed toward my dinner plate. Not his. Mine.
At first, I didn't understand. Then he said something I'll never forget. "You always eat until there's nothing left."
I looked down. He was right. My plate was completely empty. His wasn't. There was still food there. Not much. Just a little. But enough. At the time, I didn't think much about it. Years later, I realized that simple moment was actually my first lesson about why Japanese people rarely become obese. Because the first secret isn't what they eat. It's when they stop eating. A few years later, I learned this lesson again during a dinner at Tanaka's house. Some of you may remember Tanaka from our first episode.
His family invited me over for dinner one autumn evening. The table looked beautiful.
There was grilled fish, rice, miso soup, pickled vegetables, a small egg dish, several tiny side dishes.
Everything looked delicious. But there was one problem. As a German, I looked at the portions and immediately thought, surely that's not enough. Back home, I was used to much larger meals. Larger plates, larger servings, larger portions of everything. I honestly expected to be hungry later.
Apparently, my face revealed exactly what I was thinking. Because Tanaka started laughing. His wife laughed too.
Etienne thinks he's still gonna be hungry.
And honestly, they weren't wrong. That was exactly what I was thinking. Then dinner began.
What happened next surprised me. Nobody rushed. Nobody inhaled their food. People talked. People laughed. People enjoyed every dish. The meal lasted much longer than I expected.
And by the end of the evening, something strange happened. I wasn't hungry.
In fact, I felt better than I normally did after dinner. Comfortable. Relaxed.
Satisfied. Not stuffed. Not sleepy. Not uncomfortable. Just satisfied.
Later, Tanaka explained a concept that many of you may have heard before. Hara hachibu.
Eat until you are about 80% full. Not 100%. Not until your stomach hurts.
Not until you can't move. Just enough. At first, I thought this sounded insignificant. Today, I think it's one of the most powerful health habits I've ever encountered.
Because if you eat 10% less at one meal, nothing dramatic happens. But if you eat slightly less at thousands of meals over decades, the results become enormous. The second lesson arrived through someone you've already met in this series. My elderly neighbor, Mr. Nakamura. If you watched the first episode, you'll remember him. Every morning, without fail, I saw him walking. Rain, sunshine, cold weather, hot weather. It didn't matter. Mr. Nakamura walked anyway.
One morning, I finally asked him why. His answer was simple. If I stay home too long, my body will forget how to move. I've never forgotten that sentence. Because after living in Japan for years, I realized something important.
Many Japanese people don't necessarily exercise more. They simply move more. And there's a huge difference.
Back in Germany, many people drive almost everywhere. Home, office, supermarket, gym, back home again.
You change platforms. You walk to work. You walk to lunch. You walk to stores.
Without even trying, I often reached 10,000 steps a day. Not because I was exercising, because I was living. One day, I checked my phone and realized I had walked nearly 12,000 steps. I hadn't gone jogging. I hadn't visited a gym. I had simply gone through a normal day in Tokyo.
That's when I began to understand why so many people remained naturally active.
Movement wasn't something they scheduled. It was built into everyday life.
The third lesson surprised me even more because it came from Japan's famous vending machines.
When tourists arrive in Japan, they're often amazed by how many vending machines there are. Honestly, I was too.
They seem to be everywhere. Outside train stations, outside office buildings, on quiet residential streets, even in places where you would never expect them. At first, I assumed this must contribute to obesity. After all, easy access to drinks usually means more sugar. At least that's what I expected. Then I started paying attention to what people were actually buying. And I noticed something interesting. Most of my coworkers weren't drinking sugary sodas. They were buying green tea, oolong tea, barley tea, black coffee, water.
One afternoon, I noticed Sato drinking unsweetened green tea for what felt like the 1,000th time. I jokingly asked if he ever got bored.
Bored of tea? To him, tea wasn't a health strategy. It was simply normal.
That conversation forced me to examine my own habits. Before Japan, I consumed far more calories through drinks than I realized. Soft drinks, sweet coffee, energy drinks, sugary beverages between meals. The calories added up quickly. But many Japanese people simply weren't consuming them very often. Again, it wasn't a diet, it was a habit. A small habit repeated every day. The fourth lesson took much longer to understand. Because it wasn't really about food, it was about culture. Specifically, how people deal with stress. Let's be honest. Japan can be a stressful place. Long commutes, busy cities, demanding jobs,